What if I was to tell you that Genesis 1 and verse 1 holds the secret to unlocking all understanding of the rest of the Bible? Would you believe me? What if within this first verse you could get a clearer picture of a lot of those teachings that seem to be a bit foggy and unclear? Would that interest you? What if I further claimed that by understanding this first verse, you would even have more desire to read your Bible and want to draw closer to God? Is that something you would want to know? Do I have your attention? First, let me tell you that it is true. And no, it isn't mysticism or magic. Just pure truth. Are you ready? Let's begin. Though I'm sure you have memorized this verse, please look at this first verse of the Bible, Genesis 1:1, where it reads, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." Is that an accurate translation? Okay. Is that all you see in that verse, or is there any more meaning than that? Well, in Hebrew there is. Before we look at this verse in Hebrew, I need to give you a little Hebrew lesson. But don't worry, this will be easy and interesting, I promise. The Hebrew alphabet is similar to the English, as it is where all other languages come from, English being one of them. English is a derivative of Hebrew. But there is so much more to this ancient Hebrew language. Where most other languages have letters that represent sounds only, Hebrew letters are not only symbols of the sounds that are made, they are also used as numbers for counting, like Roman numerals you're acquainted with. Each letter is also a symbol of a word and started out as a picture symbol of that word. Each letter can also symbolize musical notes. Did you ever wonder how they knew the melodies of the psalms they sang? Well, now you do. These letters are also symbols of colors as well. It is the most complete language known, and for good reason. According to Genesis 11:1, it is the language that all people shared before the Tower of Babel. It is the original language. Let me share a couple of its letters. The first one is Aleph. It is where we get our A from. In Hebrew, its meaning is that of an ox or bull, symbolizing strength and power. You can see it in the pictographic form as an ox head. It is also the symbol of God, the Father. He is the epitome of strength and power. The Aleph is also used as the numeral 1 or 1000, if you're counting. The second letter is Bet. It is where our B comes from. It is the Hebrew symbol for a house, tent, or dwelling place. You can see the original symbol was of a tent or the floor plan of that tent or dwelling. Have you heard of Bethlehem? Bethlehem? That's the house of bread. The Bet is also the symbol of the Mashiach or Messiah who will dwell or house with his people, and is used as the symbol of 2 or 2000 if you are counting. This is easy, right? Now let's review what we have so far. An Aleph and a Bet. When you combine them, what do you have? Well, for one, you can say Aleph Bet, or alphabet, as we would say in English. But is there a word made with these two letters? In English, when we put together our A and our B, the best we can hope for is an abbreviation of the muscles in our midsections, or abdominals. We call them abs. But in Hebrew, we have the strength, like the ox or strong one, of the house or tent. Literally, ab means tent pole, that which holds up the tent. You may have heard the other meaning of Ab by its Aramaic name, Abba. That means father, who is strong one of the house. He is the one that holds up the family. Isn't that cool? Can you see how descriptive the language is? Well, what about the numerology, the numbers of the letters? Is there meaning there? You know a few things about Hebrew numbers already. You know the number 6 is the number of man. You know the number 7 is that of perfection. Right? Well, let's apply all these things to Genesis 1:1 and see what those around Mount Sinai knew when they heard this teaching, when it was originally taught to them by Moses. Okay? In Hebrew, Genesis 1:1 is 7 terms. Already that strikes a chord with you, right? There's perfection in what is stated there. More on that in a moment. The Hebrew terms sound something like this: Bereshit, bara, Elohim, et, hashamayim, va'et, haaretz. Let's break it down quickly. Bereshit is translated in the beginning. Bara is created. Elohim is the plural form of God. Et is not translated, but we'll discuss that in a minute. Hashamayim is the heavens. Va'et is a connector, and finally, haaretz is the earth. Now, right off the bat, I need to address the fact that there are 7 words, as that is significant to all the rest of the creation story. 7 shows perfection and must be taught as such. As in the 7 days of creation, 7 branches of the Hebrew menorah, or candlestick, 7 days of God's week, and so forth. Now let's consider the untranslated term et. It is the 4th word in Genesis 1:1, and it has very significant meanings. First, it is spelled with the 2 letters Aleph and Tav. The Aleph, as you know, is the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and Tav is the last one. One meaning of that Aleph, Tav, or et is comparable with our terminology of the phrase everything from A to Z. Everything that encompasses our alphabet and language is contained from A to Z, and the Hebrew meaning is very similar. It stands as a symbol of the entire language of Hebrew. This was the first creative act of God. He created the Hebrew language. Second, the Hebrew sages assert that this language is the very building blocks of all the physical universe, that it is the material from which everything is made that was made. They justify this by saying the very creative act that God used was speaking. He used this Hebrew language to accomplish all the rest of the created universe. His word created all things. Does this sound familiar? Remember what John wrote in the beginning of his gospel, verses 1 to 3? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. Is that teaching a little more clear now? Third, where John called the word he is based on the ancient rabbinical teachings that this et is also a symbol of the Hebrew Mashiach, or Messiah, the promised one of God. You might say the language or teachings of God in bodily form. Or as he who knew those teachings well wrote it in the same chapter in verse 11, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. The Word dwelt with us. Is that more meaningful to you now? The et dwelt with his creation. Fourth, the term et is the center word or middle of the 7 words of perfection of the creation story. He, the et, is in the midst or middle of that 7-branched candle that illuminates all of the teachings that follow. Are you seeing something here? Remember what is stated in Revelation 1, verses 12 and 13. Then I turned to see that voice that was speaking to me, and on turning I saw 7 golden lampstands, and in the midst of the lampstands one like a son of man. This et, or word, is he who dwelt, or was the dwelling from God, the bet, if you will. The very spoken word from the beginning that came from God, and that will accomplish all that he intends him to do, as it is written in Isaiah 55:11, so shall my word be that goes out from my mouth. It shall not return to me empty, but it shall accomplish that which I purpose, and shall succeed in the thing for which I sent it. This word, or et, or Mashiach, will accomplish the purpose for which God intends it. Fifth, how about this? In the Revelation, the same Hebrew we call the Apostle John, quoting this word, or et, wrote the words, I am the Aleph Tav, the beginning and the end. The Aleph Tav, the et, not the Greek Alpha and Omega, as they have no meaning. This was a Hebrew teaching. All other Hebrews learned, and the meaning is clear. This is the promised one who preceded all of creation and declares himself the very et, or language, that was in the beginning, the Word, that will carry it through the end. He is the building blocks, the very chief cornerstone of the entire created world, and we are just scratching the surface. Sixth, in the Hebrew Bible, the first letter written is the bet from Bereshit, and as you know, the bet is one of the symbols of the Messiah. But this bet is so significant that in all true copies of the Torah, it is enlarged to show more prominence than all of the following letters. It was a common practice to show emphasis where God wanted it. There are numerous places in the Torah where letters are larger, smaller, or missing something on purpose. There is something being stated here that the ancient Hebrew rabbis taught, that this very enlarged symbol of the Messiah, or the Mashiach, was the only way you could get to the very teachings of God, or to God himself. To get started, you had to go through this first symbol of the Messiah, this enlarged bet, before you could arrive at the Aleph, the symbol of God. Or maybe the English translation of John 14:6 will be easier to follow, where our Messiah said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. He clearly stated that he, Jesus, or Yeshua as his Hebrew name is the enlarged bet, the very Mashiach they were waiting for, and only through him, the enlarged bet, could you get to the Father. Can you see it? He kept fulfilling the teachings that all these people knew. He was claiming to be the Mashiach, the Messiah, and equal to God. Seventh, it also helps to explain what fulfilling the Torah meant. He had to not only teach, but to live out, be the physical example, the language in bodily form, the promised one of God, the very word that was taught. His disciples and those who opposed him knew exactly what he was saying. They had been taught these things from their youth and were intimately acquainted with them. Those whom he discipled believed him. Those who opposed him knew what he was saying about himself and wanted him dead. But do you see? It's all laid out in this first verse. The teachings of Genesis 1:1 hold the foundations to all the scripture that follows, and there are several layers more within the first verse. Do you want to hear them?